never underestimate your impact. He went on to explain that somebody needs what we have to offer. They may not know how to ask for it. They may not always show appreciation for it, but they will be better because of it. This is not a story that I share often because it is as embarrassing as it is painful. In the spring of 2015, during the second semester of my first year teaching, I hit the figurative and literal lowest point in my career. I laid in the fetal position on the floor in the middle of the hallway asking myself, why am I doing this? You may be wondering how I ended up there. Trust me, it was not the plan. The day started like any other day. Birds were singing, the wind was blowing, my homeroom was terrorizing me, nothing out of the ordinary. During my second period planning, when I was expected to reorganize my classroom, grade exit tickets, plan the following week's lessons, make copies, cover class, follow up on student discipline, meet with my team, converse with parents, respond to emails, eat lunch, and have a moment to breathe, I decided to go make copies. As I was walking to the copy room, I noticed two 8th grade boys who I did not teach posturing as if they were about to fight. We were the only 3 in the hallway at the time, and I figured that as the adult, I had to do something. So I sprang into action. Spoiler alert, I made the wrong choice. I shouted, hey, get to class. They heard me, but they decided to ignore the command and go with option B instead, beat on each other relentlessly. So now that things had gotten physical, I figured that as the adult, I had to do something else. I made yet another bad decision. I ran up to the dueling duo and inserted myself in between them in an effort to break it up. Surely, since as an adult has intervened, they're gonna stop, I thought to myself. They did not. As a matter of fact, I believe it gave them an increased level of commitment to finish what they started. Punches kept flying around and into me. Then, to make matters worse, the two decided to bear hug each other and take this party to the ground. Since I was sandwiched in between them, I had to go along for the ride. We hit the floor in one quick motion, with my left knee meeting the tile first. At this point, lying on the floor in the fetal position between them as they continued to fight, I finally made a good decision. I opened my mouth and I yelled, yo, as if to say, somebody, anybody, come do something about this. My cry for help had the same effect as the bat symbol, alerting the gym teacher, Coach Wells, that I was in distress. He came down the hall and broke up the fight. He helped me up and asked me if I was okay. With a sharp, throbbing pain in my knee, panting breath, half undone bow tie, and my heart racing, I gave him the obvious response. I'm fine, I said, in an effort to appear as if the charade went exactly as planned. He took the boys to the office and I limped back to my room with the crumpled paper that I intended to copy. Back in my room, I sat at the desk. I looked at the overturned chairs, scraps of paper all over the desk, smushed raisins on the floor from breakfast, names and checks on the board from my faulty management system, and the data wall that looked like the Spanish flag with its combination of red and yellow. I just stared for a moment. After some time passed, I said audibly in an empty classroom, I just want to teach. Although this situation was an anomaly, it was very on brand for my first year teaching. I struggled daily from August until June. I, like many teachers, had a very different expectation of what teaching would be like. I thought I would be able to manage the classroom. After all, during the 2 weeks that we spent learning classroom management in college, I was a pro. The fact that I graduated high school led me to believe that I could easily teach 7th grade math. But my end of year average student growth score of -2.6 ended that belief. I fully expected parents to partner with me and hold their children accountable for their actions. But heated debates with parents enabling their child's misbehavior proved that to be a fantasy. That year was the hardest year of my life. I was a terrible teacher. I was such a terrible teacher that it wasn't a secret. During a conversation years later, an administrator from my first year told me that they had discussed letting me go after year 1. The only saving grace for me was that math teachers are hard to find. Being completely honest, I was ready to quit. I saw what they saw and I figured that I was doing a disservice to students and that I wasn't cut out for this work. I felt as if what was being asked of me was more than I was capable of doing. I felt as if my hard work was being disrespected and my caring heart was being abused. I felt as if students would be better off with someone else. And I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt that way. If you are a teacher who was certain that you want to return to teaching next school year, you are in the minority. According to a 2022 survey by the National Education Association, 55% of teachers admit that they are thinking of leaving their profession. This is especially true in a post-pandemic era where students are so far behind, it could take as much as a decade before we see students in class who haven't been impacted by it. Teachers are tired, buried under mountains of paperwork, laboring under the weight of district, state, and federal regulations, and facing the new era of students who don't always bring a natural love and desire for school, are enough to make any teacher rethink their profession. Old methods are ineffective, most curriculum is outdated, and many resources are lacking. Not to mention, teacher pay has failed to keep pace with that of other professions who have seen their yearly salaries rise consistently. Goals are being set in the wrong way or so unrealistically that they are impossible to achieve. Yet in the midst of these challenges, teachers are expected to produce students who still perform well on standardized tests. If you connect with any of the above, just nod silently to yourself. Nobody will notice. I felt all these things and had one foot out the door, but I learned something that saved my career, and I hope it resonates with you as well. Right at the end of that first year, before I decided whether I was going to return or not, a statement in a commencement speech changed my whole life. I was at my wife Shakira's graduation, and the commencement speaker must have known what I was struggling with. I bet most of the people there tuned him out, anxious for the ceremony to end. For some reason, I was dialed in. I suppose that subconsciously I was anxious for answers. The words he spoke penetrated my being when he said, "Never underestimate your impact." He went on to explain that somebody needs what we have to offer. They may not know how to ask for it. They may not always show appreciation for it, but they will be better because of it. He talked about how we can't let the uncomfortable feeling of inadequacy stop us from figuring out how to make our impact. I thought about my why, or the reason I became an educator. I thought about the students who deserve to have teachers that care about them as much as I do. I thought about the massive impact I could have if I was able to become a highly effective educator. In that very moment, I decided that I was going to figure it out, and that's what I did. That summer, I took the opportunity to do more research than I'd ever done before. I studied how to become a better leader and what teaching methods were most effective in reaching today's students. I didn't restrict my studies to the field of education. I looked at the work of successful people across many industries and what they learned about successful leadership. What I uncovered was not what I expected, but exactly what I needed to find. I learned that there was not a perfect recipe for success. Many have demonstrated effective leadership, but not everyone's path was the same. Each person was able to achieve success by matching proven principles with their own unique gifts and talents. This helped me to understand that to make the impact I dreamed of, I had to leverage my uniqueness. The reason my students weren't growing during my first year was because while I was trying to implement research-based practices, I failed to incorporate my unique gifts and talents. I tried so hard to model after others that I forgot to highlight what set me apart. I tried to impact through the 99% of me that was just like everyone else, when I should have prioritized the 1% that makes me amazing. We'll dive deeper into that statement in chapter 5. I knew what I had to do. I needed to find out what made me unique and allow my differences to make a difference. That is exactly what I did, and it worked. I clearly identified my dream outcome for students, harnessed my unique abilities, fortified my mindset against doubt, and transformed unmotivated students to empowered achievers. The result? I transitioned from being a terrible teacher to a 2-time Teacher of the Year. I always say that becoming a Teacher of the Year was never the goal. It was just a byproduct of me understanding the 4 IDs of my teacher identity. I became a transformative teacher by understanding how to do the following: identify my dream, illuminate my differences, ignore my doubters, and improve my data. My goal now is to help as many teachers as possible go further faster. The information in this book is a detailed blueprint of how I was able to make the transition described earlier. I will tell you about the lessons I've learned, the strategies that I have seen work consistently, and the things I wish I knew while I was going through the struggle. In true teacher fashion, be prepared to annotate, respond, and reflect as we go through the chapters. Get ready to be vulnerable as we do thought-provoking exercises that uncover your 1% amazing. After all, my goal is not to make you the next best version of me or anybody else, but to help you become the very best version of yourself. You can only do that by learning how to leverage your uniqueness, and I will show you how. Before we begin though, let me address what might be a nagging question in your mind. How am I going to be uniquely me and use groundbreaking methods in a school where the administration is unsupportive and the atmosphere in the building is not conducive for innovation? It's a great question. So often, teachers are blocked from making changes the administration hasn't approved, and teachers get all kinds of pushback. Even their fellow teachers can resent a teacher's success when they themselves are struggling. Have no fear. In chapter 10, I will show you how to get buy-in from the administration in ways that will not only support your efforts, but that will help to transform the culture of your school building. I will also show you how to collaborate with other teachers and with the students in an effective way that makes them your allies rather than your detractors. I've spent years developing this system. Now, I want to share that research and experience with you. What can you expect? You'll gain clarity of your purpose and increase efficacy in your practice. You will reignite your love of teaching as your students will develop a love of learning. You will see both measurable and immeasurable results in your students. You'll be able to revive your dream of a long and prosperous teaching career. I can tell you that it won't be easy, but I can also tell you that it's worth it. You can do hard things. You've got this, and I've got you. Let's get started. All right. Woo. A lot of words.